The sun bleeds into the lake, and the lake bleeds back. Two brothers go night fishing on a forgotten shore, but what they pulled from the water that night isn't human. She was beautiful, too beautiful. And behind that smile, something waited, something that had drowned long ago. You're still here? Then you're one of us now. Like, subscribe, and keep listening before she comes back. The sun's final rays were drawing the last ragged breaths of a dying man, bleeding out in crimson and gold across the sky. The lake lay like a vast, black sheet of glass, a pane behind which some unseen force seemed to watch us, observing what we could not see. I, Holt, and my younger brother Aspen, whose friendship ran deeper in my veins than my own blood, stood in a place where the silence itself felt like a moving, breathing sound. An elderly local had told us of this spot, his eyes shadowed with a peculiar dread. He had warned us, when night falls here, it isn't big fish that come out. It's a different kind of catch altogether. We unpacked our gear, the fishing rods that felt like extensions of our own arms, the bait that was an invitation to death, and a large net that seemed less a tool and more a snare. We were discussing preparations for the following week's fishing competition when suddenly a ripple shot across the water's surface. But it was no ordinary ripple. It was as if the water itself had drawn a breath, a deep, heavy sigh. Then an abrupt and absolute silence fell. Holt, Aspen's voice held the fear of childhood monsters, but deeper, more real. Did you see that? It looked as if not a thing, but a person had entered the water. And then it happened. About 50 yards away, the water's surface tore open, but this was no ordinary splash. It was as if the very essence of the water had ruptured. A large black shape emerged, so immense it defied human comprehension. At first, we thought it must be a submerged log finally risen, but then the shape halted, and our breaths caught in our throats. It was no inanimate object. It had a presence, a consciousness. It was an unnaturally elongated, human-like form floating on the surface, far longer than any man could be. Its upper part was out of the water, and it was facing us, though we could discern no face. There was only a dark, empty space that seemed to stare into our very souls. For a heartbeat, it remained there, a being that belonged neither to the water nor the land, and then, slowly, without a sound, without creating a single wavelet, it slid back into the water. It was as if the lake had reclaimed a part of itself. We were astonished. No, more than that, we were utterly disoriented. So late at night, in this bitter cold, what kind of fool would be swimming here? We tried to reassure ourselves that it must have been some drunken local, and we returned to our task. Yet a tremor lingered in our hands, and our hearts had sounded an alarm for the unnatural. But then came the minute when fate turned its wheel. We heard a rustling in the water right beside us, a sound like wet silk dragging across skin. In a single jerky motion, I cast the net, thinking a hungry fish had struck the bait. But what the net caught was no fish. The net pulled up with an unexpected weight, a weight that held a strange, unsettling elasticity. And then it broke the surface. It was the same entity. The net had tangled in her hair, hair that was soaked yet perfectly untangled, as if someone had deliberately arranged it. And as it emerged from the water, our eyes refused to accept the reality standing before us. It was not a man. It was a young woman, perhaps 20 years old, clad in a black swimsuit that clung to her curves as if she were a carved statue. Her wet tresses, like dark silk, were plastered to her face as if they were a part of it. She was stunningly beautiful, a beauty that could stop the heart. Her features were flawless, her eyes deep and vast like oceanic trenches, her lips slightly parted as if about to whisper a secret. Yet this beauty held a strange, dreadful quality. It felt like a mask behind which something else lay hidden. Her eyes held no light. They were completely black, like the eyes of a dead fish. Her skin had an unnatural sheen, as if she were made of water. And most terrifying of all, not a single drop of water fell from her body. She was completely dry, despite having just emerged from the lake. She was watching us, and in her smile was a mystery that froze our very souls. "What are you doing here?" she asked. Her voice was like water, clear and sweet on the surface, but with an icy coldness in its depths that seeped into our spines. Every word seemed to hang in the air, not as sounds, but as frozen droplets settling on our skin. Aspen answered hesitantly, his voice trembling with a fear drawn from a deep well. "We're fishing. Why are you swimming here so late? You must tell us." His question hung in the air, a weightless thing caught by some unknown force. The girl gave no answer. The smile that played on her lips was as if a mask of mirth had been glued onto her face. It was a lifeless smile, soulless, as artificial as the grin painted on a corpse by an undertaker. Her eyes, already devoid of light, seemed to grow deeper, like two open graves waiting for us. "Let's get out of here," I said to Aspen, every word shuddering with the fear inside me. "I feel as though we're standing on someone's grave." We packed our things in a frantic hurry. Our hands shook, our hearts hammered madly. The girl was still standing there, as motionless as a statue, her eyes holding us captive. Her smile was still etched on her face, a smile that was now branding itself into our memories like a searing iron. When we turned for a final look to bid her farewell, something happened that none of us could have anticipated. She began to scream. It was no ordinary scream. It was not a sound, but pure terror resonating in the stagnant air. A sound as if hundreds of drowning people were crying out in unison. In that shriek was a rage suppressed for centuries, a sorrow that had transcended all boundaries of time, and a warning more frightening than death itself. We ran, no, we wrenched from our bodies every ounce of strength and then some, our hearts battered against our ribs, feeling as if they would tear us apart. We reached the car, started it, and sped off into the darkness without a single glance back. The two brothers, Holt and I, ran desperately towards our car. Behind us those screams still echoed, but they were no longer words, just a savage noise, as if a beast were howling in agony. Our lungs burned, and our hearts slammed against our chests. Piling into the car, I turned the key and we sped off, tires spraying gravel. Aspen grabbed his phone and dialed 999. "Hello? Police? We need help.
Yes, near the old mill pond. There's a girl. She doesn't seem right at all." The voice on the phone promised a car would be sent immediately. We drove the entire way back in silence. That image, her hollow, soulless smile, and then the sudden screams. None of it felt real. The next day, 2 constables came to our house. They told us the girl had been found, picked up near the grounds of a derelict hospital. "Who is she? What happened to her?" I asked anxiously. One of the constables opened his notebook. "Her name is Elsie. She's the sole survivor of a tragic accident." He explained that exactly 1 year ago, Elsie and her fiancé had been
boating on that very lake. A storm had blown up suddenly and capsized the boat. Elsie survived, but her fiancé drowned, and his body was never recovered. She had tried everything to save him, but failed. The trauma was so severe that her mind had completely shattered. She returns to that lake every year on the same date, the constable said. Her mind convinces her that if she becomes a good enough swimmer, if she can hold her breath long enough in the depths, she will find him. She mistakes anyone who goes there at night for a specter of her lost love and demands of them, "Where have you hidden him?" Hearing this, my hair stood on end. That dreadful smile, those screams, they were all expressions of a pain too profound to bear.